All right, I'm just getting started. I apologize for the delay. There was a situation that I just got tied into, and so now I'm here. I do apologize for that, group. Sorry for the delay. I'm going to share my screen. And just a moment. Hello. I do apologize for the Zoom meeting running late this evening. Um, so I'm going to pull up. Okay, thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm going to pull up the agenda. We'll make it pretty informative tonight. Um, so, and then, so tonight, what we'll do is we'll do a little review, and then we will look at the main lecture, which is the main topic of today. And then what we'll do is, after that, we'll do a preview, is what we'll do. So let me share out. Actually. Um, so, one of the things that I wanted to touch on in last week's lecture um, was some of the main concepts from um, here. I'll pull it up, but just getting very comfortable with some of the main topics from. Um, Let me see. Hold on one second. Hmm. Get that book out here. I'll just go into I'll just download the ebook. All right. Second. All right. In fact, let me pull up the. Uh, okay, there we go. And yeah. Um, so last week, and many of you guys I know were here, but um, there were certain topics that we didn't really get a chance to talk about, and I just felt like a quick little review of some of those topics would be pretty important. Um, and it really has to do with the concept of the Active Directory, um, and also this other topic, the Windows domain. So, understanding kind of how things are connected in a work group. So that's another thing. When you're installing Windows and whatnot, um, you're potentially creating a network when you first start to sign in, and whether even if it's a personal computer, sometimes there's still like a home group that is just enacted by default. And so this is a good example of a work group, right? And so like if you think about it, EFCC is its own work group. So a Windows work group is a type of peer-to-peer network in which no single computer controls the network, and each computer controls its own resources. So this is kind of an example of how something like this would happen. Okay. So let's keep this example going and look at some more things here. So the concept of the window domain, and here this is a core two objective. Basically, um, this is when you're dealing with what they're saying, a kind of a larger or private network like a corporate office or a college network like the EFCC or something like that. A Windows domain is a type of client-server network, which the network where the resources are managed by centralized computers and the computer making requests from another is called a client. Okay. And so here you have this setup where it's the client-server system. And so everything is kind of connected on the same, you know, on the same system, and it's all running through a server, which in many cases is just another computer in itself that's just dedicated to, distributing all of those different things. All right. So that's one of the main topics that I wanted to review in Module 12, where we didn't really get a chance to touch on it all that much. So here it says if your computer is part of a domain, you can press Control Alt Delete when Windows starts to display a sign-in screen and then enter your network ID and password, right? So we don't really have to do that for our home computers, but for certain jobs or even colleges, they do. And there is a way to access the school's network from home. And so when you do that, there will be some sign-in screens and things like that that you'll have to log into, and then you have access to like the network drives and stuff like that. That was about it, really. I just I just think that we just do have to be aware of the different types of setups and groups that are formed when you first, install on a computer. It is important to be able to, um, put it like set it up so that it's actually on the correct domain. And so some of this other things that we kind of talked about last time as well, just activating it. I mean, depending on if you have an activation key or whatnot. So those are all pretty straightforward. Uh, let's see what else we have. Okay. Yep. That's all good there. I'm just gonna kind of gloss over the rest of this. Um, we did talk a little bit about the Hyper-V. Did anybody in here activate theirs or kind of look at theirs a little closer? I know there was a lab based on doing things like that, but did anybody have any experience with their own, were able to access their hypervisor in Windows? Okay. Um, so then next we have, let's see here. All right, yeah, that's all good. We talked a little bit about this last time as well. Updates, malware, control panel. That's not much else really there. The last piece here in module 12 is dealing with um, certain concerns when in a large enterprise, right? And so they kind of give you like a scenario and then they talk about certain issues that could arise. And so here's what's happening. We have the categories, the methods, the descriptions, and whatnot. It's all pretty straightforward. Um, yeah, and then inside here is like the BIOS screen. So you do have to activate this to kind of set it to get the right settings and things like this to get kind of your right customization. So that's all pretty straightforward. Um, Here's another module summary toward the end of the book of this unit. It just talks about the evaluating of the systems, understanding how Windows supports networking, checklist before installing, what to do after the install, and the main point was verifying your network access and making your updates and also your malware settings and making sure all your hardware is connected and updated. Your user counts and other applications that you need, making sure all the applications are on that machine. And then the special circumstances in the large enterprise. These are the kind of main bullet points there. Other than that, not much else happening in module 12. I thought it was pretty straightforward. Um, let's see here. Some of these questions are good questions. I mean, it's always a good idea to kind of, go through some of these. Um, they're going to help you think critically. I believe the answers toward the back to these. Uh, we can take a quick look here. So let's just do a few of these just to kind of, you know, kind of warm up our thinking cap and see what kind of questions these really are. So the first one it says, and let me make this a little bigger. All right, yeah, that's good. Okay, so the first one says you are planning an upgrade from Windows 8.1 to Windows 10. Your system uses a network card that you don't find on the Microsoft Windows 10 list of compatible devices. What do you do next? Okay. And then the choices are abandon the upgrade and continue to use Windows 8.1. That I mean, the question is, what do you do next? And that's like basically do nothing is what they're suggesting. Check the website of the network card manufacturer for a Windows 10 driver. Buy a new network card or install a dual boot for Windows 8.1 and Windows 10 and only use the network when you have Windows 8.1 loaded. And here it looks like many of you have identified B. Yeah, I'm going to agree as well. Check that website on that network card. And then oftentimes you could just go to that site and they'll just have those things that you would download and update, and that should set you up. So that was really good. Um, let's try one more, and then we could double check if these answers are in the book or not. Number two, you have just installed Windows 10, and now you want to install your favorite game that worked fine under Windows 8.1. When you attempt the installation, you get an error. What is your best next step? Now, we do have some options. Now, we know the game worked fine in Windows 8, but now that we've updated to Windows 10, it's not working. A, purchase a new version of the game, one that's compatible with Windows 10, download any updates to Windows 10, reinstall Windows 8.1, or install a virtual machine running Windows 8.1. Now, oftentimes there are games that are compatible with the newer upgrades. I've never really seen an issue where if you're upgrading your machine to the next uh, kind of update or the operating system, that it's not compatible. I do like B for this. And it says, what's your best next step, right? It may not work, your next step. It may not necessarily work, but it might be a good idea. Since you did just install Windows 10, they're assuming that maybe when you installed it that you didn't update. Um, so oftentimes the version of your Windows 10 may not be fully updated. And so you do have to go and do that as well. All right, and let's double check toward the back. Let's see if, let's see here. Let's check the, it's after, okay, so there's still another cluster there. Yeah, they don't necessarily have any solutions there that I saw, unless it's in module 12 alone, but probably not. Question came in. I've had issues like that before. If I have a game that randomly starts being buggy or crashing and not loading, I double check that everything's updated on my computer. Nice. Yeah, I think that helps when you actually have experience in that type of scenario. All right. So let's take a peek at Windows 13, and then after we gloss over some of the things in the book, we'll take a look at the assignments as well and just make sure we're clear on those assignments. And so the main topic here is maintaining Windows. right? And it's not just, you install it and you're done. Um, there is a lot of maintaining that will have to happen. And so it's broken down into the three objectives. You're set up and perform scheduled preventative maintenance tasks to keep Windows healthy and prepare for disaster. Use Windows tools, including disk management, to manage hard drives, and then use commands to manage files, folders, and hard drive. You know, like sometimes computers just start to get slow. And one of the other things that's not on here, but sometimes it's a matter of just dusting off some of the fans and some of the hardware. Um, just things, when the fans get dusty, then it starts to get hotter. And when it gets hot, it may not necessarily operate in the way that it should. Things can get a little slower, get burnt out, and um, so that should also be included. I don't know if, I mean, obviously it's not the main topic that they're interested in, but this kind of a pro tip that the hardware should also be regularly, dusted off and cleaned up, and sometimes just opening up the actual computer and making sure that everything is, well organized inside there. So let's just kind of go through some of these. Um, okay, yeah, this is all good stuff. I mean, it kind of goes without saying. Um, it is a good idea to keep good records on what you've done, when you did it, what type of updates and fixes you've had. That way, whenever there is an issue, you can kind of find things right away. Um, Here are some of they call them useful settings and also control panel applets that can be used to help maintain certain things. Um, right. So use the About window to find important information about your hardware and Windows install. Um, yeah, it's kind of looks like mine. When you click on the About page, it does tell you, you know, information about your chip, how much RAM, other important things. Um, let's see, sound applet, null applet. Okay, power options. Um, yeah, so there's sleep mode, hibernation, and you can read more about it here, but um, there are a few different types of modes, and I think as an exam tip, they say that the A+ Core 2 exam might give you a scenario and expect you to know which power options to change to solve a problem, including using power plans and sleep, hibernate, and standby modes. So here, when we talk about sleep mode, um, it's also called standby mode or suspend mode, and it's to save power. And I actually use sleep mode quite a lot. Um, the thing that's interesting about it is it's like totally off. It looks like it's off, but once you wake it up, like if you push a button on the keyboard or use your mouse, it will start to just wake up and you're automatically back exactly where you were. But there are some security issues too that you might want to consider. So you might want to think about when the best time to put things in sleep mode. Um, so they talk a little bit about that. So actually the way it works is they're saying Windows first saves the current state, including open files to memory, and saves some of the work to the hard drive. Then everything is shut down except memory and enough of the system to respond to a wake up. In sleep mode, the power light on the laptop might blink from time to time. A laptop generally uses about 1% to 2% of battery power for each hour in sleep mode. To wake up the computer, press the power button. For some computers, you can just press a key or touchpad, and then Windows wakes up in about 2 seconds. When it is in the sleep mode, it can still perform window updates and schedule tasks. Okay. So Windows can be configured to go to sleep after a period of inactivity, or you can manually put it into sleep. To put the system to sleep manually, click Start and then click Power icon and select Sleep. Now, the other question becomes, well, what about it going to sleep on itself? Where do I go to know my setting? I should know when my computer is going to go to sleep or not. Or I should be able to customize my computer going to sleep or not. Maybe you're the kind of person that you don't want your computer to go to sleep when you leave it. You want it up and you're just going to, let's just say, you decide to go eat or go cook and you have 2 hours or so away from the computer, but you want everything to just be up. I mean, you could be downloading something, you could be running a program, and if nothing is being touched, it may automatically go to sleep. Okay. I had this happen. I recently created an audiobook. It's just a project that I'm working on. I uploaded it to YouTube, but before I created the book, um, the program had to translate the entire book, and I left. I knew it was going to take like an hour or so, even more, and my computer went to sleep. And when it went to sleep, the program didn't run anymore. Okay. Um, So that's something that you definitely want to be aware of. You should know your machine and know where to go to modify um, that feature. Sometimes machines will go to sleep too quick, and depending on the kind of machine that you're using, like for example, if you're using a computer that's on the school's network, you might not be able to control when it can sleep or not, because that computer settings are just controlled by the administrator of the school. And so you just have to kind of, use it the way they want you to use it, and you can't modify it. But if you are the administrator of the machine, then you can kind of do that. Now, there's another thing called hibernation. And so this is where it will save all the work to the hard drive, powers down the system, and then when you press the power button, the Windows reloads a state, including all open applications and documents. When Windows is in sleep mode on the laptop and senses the battery is critically low, it will put the system into hibernation. Yeah, I've seen video game systems and consoles go into hibernating mode where it's kind of like sleeping. I think I think sleeping and hibernation is closely related. Um, where some machines may not have both of them. They may have one or the other. But I do know consoles do have that feature as well. And you can tell when something's in hibernation mode by um, Sometimes the lights will flash kind of in a on and off. I know I used to have a PS4, and it would be like this brown light that would actually just flash. And I think it was either in hibernation or sleep mode, I forget. But it was definitely a different feature. Um, and then whenever you wanted to come back and play, you just, you know, push a button on the controller or something, or push the start button, and then you're just boom, you're back up. All right. all right, let's look at this important note. It says recall hard drives are permanent and non-volatile storages, and memory is temporary or volatile storage. So a hard drive does not require power to hold its contents. Memory, on the other hand, is volatile and loses its contents when it has no power. In hibernation, the computer has no power. Therefore, everything must be stored on the hard drive. Okay. So it does, the A plus does get pretty technical. You really have to know the operating system and kind of the little nuances of how things work. And so that's kind of how it is. All right, let's keep going. Note 6. So the notes are really good to look at. With data and software, the rule of thumb is if you can't get along without it, back it up. Okay. It's good. That's a good idea. I think one of the most important things a lot of people don't back up, and they should, are their bookmarks on their browser. I recently had that problem where I lost my bookmarks, and it was a huge problem because it wasn't to my personal bookmark account. I backed that up, but it was just, through my job, I had a lot of bookmarks, and I was using the machine, and all of a sudden, I uh, I added a new profile, and it just got so weird after that. I don't know, like Google Chrome and with Chromebooks and things like that with their Google profiles, it's so unorganized, and so when you create a new profile, you could potentially lose all the stuff on your older profile, including bookmarks and things like that. But sure enough, you can actually back them up and find them somewhere. Um, so here it says where to keep data and backups. Okay, probably nowadays it's best to have things backed up in the cloud, and the cloud is secure. I know a lot of people are hesitant that the cloud wasn't secure, but it is. Um, People who even work at the data center don't really have access to it. Um, Especially if there are certain keys that were given to you, um, they're not going to know it. And I've had that happen. Now I know things are changing, and especially because of the world that we live in. I remember one time this was about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There was um, a mass shooting in Silicon Valley. There was someone who stormed like YouTube or somewhere down there in California, right near Stanford University in Mountain View, where the headquarters are. There's just a lot of tech companies there. It's kind of starting to disperse now a lot because a lot of people working from home, and they move up to, Oregon and Texas and all these other places where it's cheaper rent and stuff like that. But, for the longest time, for the past 30 years, the Bay Area, like San Jose, Stanford, Mountain View, has been considered Silicon Valley. So this guy runs in there. I think he even ended up shooting somebody. It was pretty tragic. It was horrendous. And he ended up dropping his phone. And and they couldn't get inside of it. Nobody could. And that's when I realized that, yeah, our phones are secure. They couldn't without his PIN. It was as simple as that. And then again, you got to remember, this happened in Silicon Valley. So if anybody knows how to get into your phone, it's going to be the people who are creating those devices. And so the FBI and all of these people, they couldn't get into his phone without his digits, or I think it was like 6 digits. And you can't just sit there and try all of the combinations. That's not gonna, that's 100,000 different combinations. Um, that nobody's gonna do that. Um, and I think after you've done it a few times, it just you get locked out for like 24 hours. Now, that was then. Like now, I wouldn't be surprised if there is kind of a fix for that, although there shouldn't be. Um, and if there is, then it's in the terms when you first sign on to use the device, you have to agree to the terms, and they make you if you and it's by default. A lot of people don't read the terms because they realize that they have to agree regardless. Otherwise, you can't use the device. And they should say it in some kind of way, maybe in kind of the lawyer language type of way. They will they will explain it whether or not they can have access to your phone and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the greatest contributions of the AI right now with Chat GPT and others, where you can feed ChatGPT all of those uh, documents and then ask it specific questions, and the chatbot can decipher and clearly answer the question based on all the information that you gave it, and it's doing it instantaneously. I mean, the power of AI is amazing. So imagine you download all of the terms and conditions and you feed it into the chatbot, and then you ask the chatbot, can such and such access my device without my permission? Is it written anywhere in these documents? And I'm pretty sure, knowing that, I mean, we're still learning the capabilities of what AI can do and what it can't do, but I think it would be light work for it to do something like this. Okay. But in terms of, paying for more storage and things like that, it is it's pretty secure. Right. And I happen to know for a fact, just through personal experience when I was working in Google Cloud, I had some issues and I started to speak with someone to help me through it, and he couldn't even access nothing without certain information from me. And this guy who I was talking to it got accelerated. Like I was able to talk to like there was nobody past this guy. So if this guy couldn't pretty help me, there's nobody else that would know. Like sometimes you expect people to know, but the truth is, it's like there's so many hands on these devices to where the summation of everybody's work put together creates it. And so one single person may not necessarily know everything. Uh, And that's when I realized that, yeah, the cloud is pretty safe. Okay, they do talk about backing things up. I think you could also schedule, have the backups go on their own, like every so often. And if you don't, you can simply write a program or a script to do this, right? Again, um, and you can have the script run on its own every so often, like you could write a script um, to have your system backed up every 3 or 4 hours, or I mean every 3 to 4 months, and stored in a folder on your desktop. And then from there, you can just put it on a thumb drive because you would want to store things outside of your machine because that's the whole point. What if your machine gets destroyed, right? So that is that's how you'd be able to back everything up. Now, nowadays, people are just using the cloud to do it, but the problem with this is you have to pay. You actually have to pay, and that sucks. Um, the whole spirit of computing and using the internet and the computers is that there should be a free way to do it, and there is. All right. But I think the whole paying for more storage and stuff like that, it's convenience. One of the things I realized too is when you're using Apple, like the iOS, it's good to have the storage in the Apple Cloud and all that, because then when it comes to your computer, like for example, my iPhone only has 256 gigabytes, which is plenty for me. It's always been enough. I'm happy with my amount of storage. But the problem is um, having 1,000 or 1 TB. Those are so expensive, and you could just get that separately. Yeah, the cloud is really cool. It is, and you guys will be using that quite a lot. There's a class on that, and they talk about it a lot, and I'm sure at some point we'll discuss it too. Um, but yeah, yeah, one of my most recent projects I did using the AWS. I've had a lot of projects that I've created just for different things, but um, I always use the cloud, and things just work out. So the cloud is pretty powerful. Really cool invention. All right, let's take a look at um, the part about maintaining hard drives. Let's make this a little bigger. Um, in the control panel is used to control how users view files and folders in the Explorer and what you can do with these files. So Windows has an annoying habit of hiding file extensions if it knows which applications associate. So just after install, it hides .exe and .com, .sys, .text file extensions, but does not hide docx, ptx, and all these until the software to open these files has been installed. Windows really doesn't want you to see its own system files, and it hides these files from view until you force it to show. And their main reason is because Windows cannot be distributed, all right? It's all copywritten and proprietary. And so, even though you may be able to find all those files, you're not supposed to modify them. That's not how Windows, you agree to not do that. Now, when it comes to Linux, you can. You can. And and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people do use Linux in the first place. And honestly, to me, when I look at Macintoshes, to me, they're Linux machines. They're just like, but it is like the most powerful flavor of all Linux distributions to me are Macintoshes. They come from that same family. But now they've gotten so big that to where they're not just Linux machines anymore. They're on par with a Windows machine. Um, but for me, I'm not interested in changing to Mac because if I wanted to, I could just set up a virtual machine. And it is possible to have a virtual machine Mac on a Windows machine, even though they have different architectures. And the reverse is true as well. I have seen, I haven't done it myself because I don't have Macintosh, but I've seen people with Macintoshes have a virtual machine running Windows. And so, you don't really need both. You can get away with just one of them. All right. Here they talk about the files, even the icons, how to hide files. Sometimes you can encrypt folders and stuff like this. Um, so there's different options for your file explorer. All right, the other piece is cleaning the hard drive. This will help maintain your speed as well. Um, yeah, it could get out of hand, especially when you download stuff. So some of these are good. Desk cleanup, deleting unneeded files and including system files and deleting all but the most recent restore points. These are all good things. All right, so here they're talking about optimizing the hard drive. And there's basically two types of hard drives, the magnetic hard disk drive and then the solid state drive. And um, when it comes to gaming, especially if you want to have one of the better setups, something faster, they say the solid state drive are going to be better because they're faster. And um, but the other one, what we see here, the magnetic hard drive is divided into concentric circles called tracks, and the tracks are divided into sectors, right? And this is all at the like nanotechnology level scale, like it's tiny. Um, most computers that are built will have both. Um, Sometimes you'll see both. But I think it does make a slight difference. So there's a lot here. So sometimes people just mount a drive on there. Yeah, that's kind of like my situation. So if I pull up, let me see if I can pull up one of my drives here. Um, so I actually have, I'll close these so it's just easier to see. So for this PC, I actually have two drives. Let me make this bigger. Hopefully, all right. I might have something sensitive on this. Let me change to, I know what to do. I'll just create a new folder. So, um, in my machine that I'm using right now, the bottom left corner, I see there's two different drives. And one of the drives, it has the Windows icon, which means the operating system is loaded on the C drive. And then I also have the D drive, which is a lot bigger. So if I right click on this and I click properties, it shows how big the drive, my C drive is, and then it also shows how much space I have left. And the problem is I've used 802 gigabytes on my C drive. This is a potential problem. Because I'm almost running out of space. And actually, and we all know 150 gigabytes is not all that much. Now, when I go to my D drive, I right click on that and click properties. This even has a bigger capacity. It was a 2 TB drive. I'm using 600 gigabytes, but I have over a terabyte left. So what I've done is it's a little slower. It's not as fast as the C drive. And that's why I use the C drive because I know the C drive is a little faster, but the D drive is just as fast. It's fine. But what what I'm planning on doing is moving more things over to the D drive that I don't really need to clean it all up. And there's a lot of other things you can do. Um, Sometimes you can just, you know, do the boosting thing that they recommend and stuff like that. But you got to really do your research though before you start to fool around with the drives because you could end up doing something that can't be reversed. And also, before you decide to fool around with the drives, you definitely would want to back certain things up to in case of an emergency. I'm also networked in on my Linux machines. I have three of them going, the Docker desktop. And the Docker desktop is for a crypto project that I've been working on. And I think at some point I can share a little bit more about that. To me, I think it should be talked about a lot more, the blockchain technology and things of this sort. But right now, it's just you kind of have to learn it on your own, which there are a lot of resources for. They don't talk about it too much in schools right now, but they really should, because it's clearly not going anywhere. And there's so much money being poured into crypto. It is And I think partly the reason why is because it's decentralized. So it's worldwide, global. And so when you have something that's global, it's a whole new ballgame. It's just like the new app that came out called Red Note. Red Note, well, I don't think it's a new app, but it's a Chinese app, and the users in there are from all over the world. And some of them are saying like, hey, if you have an account on Red Note, keep it because whatever you're trying to sell, you now have a global audience. The problem is, though, is that can we really trust um, another nation? And, the Trump policies came out and said, hey, they can control our minds. It's deep stuff. Um, they can influence what we think and buy because they understand the power of technology. And so if so the government feels as though it's kind of already happening. But the problem is the government would rather want to control us instead of another government trying to control us. Because that's what governments do. They control their people. And that app is put out by the Chinese government. I think it's under the control of China. And so that's just an example of why or just in terms of just having things that are centralized and decentralized and things of that sort. But yeah, no, I mean, when it comes to personal machines, a lot of people don't really do all of these things because it also depends on what are you using your machine for. Um, if your machine doesn't have sensitive things, then you don't have to really make it turn it into Fort Knox. You don't have to secure it too much. Um, but if you're doing things on very private level and things of this sort, and there's a lot of sensitive information or images and things of this sort, then you probably do want to harden it a little bit more. Um, yeah, every once in a while I'll show like movie clips and there's shows. I mean, I could I could like start a discussion thread in Canvas about the different IT shows out there. Um, and there are some shows where they talk about, how do you even have your own network? Like instead of getting your internet through the cable company, how can you have your own, right? And then the question becomes, well, wait, do you create your own cable company? Which some guys do, right? They, I mean, it is possible to have your own cable company, but it just won't be that big. You won't be able to have a lot of people. And if you did get a lot of people, um, then you're gonna have more money and all that. But in terms of just having your own tiny cable business, um, then okay, you probably then would have your own access to the internet where nobody now can see your traffic. Because that becomes another question. It's like on my personal computer, um, my traffic is being funneled through my cable company. So can my cable company get access to my network and all these things, right? Um, and so how secure is that? Well, the truth is like nobody's really it's there's just so many computers out there, and there's so many to where they can't really zoom in on just one person. There's no need to be paranoid. Um, okay, the last part of this module is using the command line interface, which we call PowerShell. And PowerShell is, or the command prompt is what they call it, yeah. But in Windows 10, though, we do have the PowerShell. And knowing the PowerShell is actually a skill. Um, so if I were to right click, I could pull up the PowerShell. There's a few different types, but here's my PowerShell, and it does have some Linux-like commands. Okay, it does. Um, I forget which, yeah, okay. So there's certain commands, like just basic commands it may have. Present working directory, who am I? So it feeds me information about certain things, but you can basically do everything in terms of management and controlling your device from the shell. So the command line interface is actually pretty powerful. You're interacting with the computer on a very abstract level. It's just harder because not everybody's going to know the commands. So it's not common to use the command line to do all these things. Like I could use the command line to create a folder, right? I could say make folder, make directory, hello. It's done. I now have a new folder. Um, I could modify this folder. I can move the folder. I can move contents into this folder. And so the beauty behind Windows is that you have Windows to help guide you do everything, and you can actually just use a mouse and click without typing, and you can control your whole entire machine just off clicking, um, which makes things a little bit more visual. And so we have to know both the tangible side of the machine with Windows, but also the abstract side, which is like the core of the computer, which is the shell. And we call it the CLI, the command line interface. So you're interacting with the command line. And if you type CMD, I get my prompt here. Now this isn't necessarily the PowerShell, but it pretty much acts just like it. We can look at the properties of this, options, layout, colors, and you could really kind of make it kind of cool. We can make it see through a little bit. I don't even know if that's, it's kind of like a Kali Linux type of flavor. And you can kind of, I don't know. You can fool around with a little bit, but um, yeah. And so they talk a little bit about, oh, close this. They talk a little bit about what to do here. CLS to clear the window. Okay, so it has its own commands. There are certain commands where you can get help and whatnot. Um, So there'll be labs in this module. Let's take a quick look at that before we call it good for tonight. We'll go into let's get back into um, our page here. And so and I'll be sure to add the due dates as well, even though you can work on things after the due date. Um, so if I click on one of the labs here, so I'm just in now. I mean, I can look at my contents and whatnot and all of these other things. So module 13 has the 12 activities. It has, again, all right, looks like we're off to a good start. We have the PowerPoints, the flashcards as usual. And let me make this is getting kind of, there we go. And then also the Learn It materials. So the Learn It materials are going to help you get comfortable with everything. So it's all there, nicely organized. And then lastly too, just a quick preview of what we're going to be discussing in the next week. Um, Troubleshooting Windows after starting it up. Okay, pretty straightforward. If we look at the way the modules are divided, um, let's go to 4. It will be modules 4 and 5 put together. So they're both kind of troubleshooting and they're smaller, so we're able to put them all together. So we'll be talking more about troubleshooting, also backup and recovery and implementations, and then troubleshooting Windows after starting up, and also troubleshooting the operating systems and stuff like that, which is an important skill to have. And that's about it for now, guys. And I do again apologize for the late recording, but it seems like we were able to get it in and we can move on. Are there any questions that you guys may have?